Hello, wonderful. This is Sarah, and I'm here with the fabulous Kim Saeed. She is a narcissistic abuse recovery coach, expert, relationship specialist expert, and author. Hey, Kim, how are you?
Hey there, Sarah. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you today for two reasons. One, because I really like you, and we made
Oh,
friends last week, and
yes.
two, because I'm finally having my caffeine of the day. I hadn't had any coffee before, so I'm like
I'm on my
excited.
third cup, so
I'm excited to chat such an important subject, right? Dating
yes,
after a narcissistic relationship, or dating specifically after you've been in a toxic relationship.
yes.
So what's
It,
different?
well, of course, normal relationships, they may not always be perfect and they may not always work out, but you don't leave a normal relationship with trauma. And so there are basically two schools of people who, when they have been in a toxic relationship with a narcissist, obviously experiencing high levels of emotional trauma, low self esteem, shame, and things like that. And so there are two schools of people. The first group will go out and immediately try to start dating someone else. And then there's another group who doesn't want to go out and meet anyone else because they now have trust issues.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we can talk a little bit about both groups.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. That's literally the conversation I had with one of my coaching clients this morning,
oh my gosh. Yeah,
right?
because, yeah.
And I
Um,
think about it as opening a door. Some people, after they open the door really, really wide and aren't willing to shut it if someone is proves not to be safe. And then other people have the door shut and held so tightly that it's like no one's going to get in ever and ever hurt me again.
right,
And
right.
neither way leads to success.
No. So I don't know what you tell your coaching clients, but I generally tell mine, and it's even in my online program, to wait at least a year if you've come out of one of these relationships. And that is with doing regular trauma work or emotional healing. And there are different reasons for why this is important. But, first of all, there's a lot of emotional healing that needs to take place. Then there is also learning to set and maintain boundaries, because if we have strong enough boundaries and we feel comfortable maintaining them, then we don't have to worry about whether other people are narcissists or not.
That's a great point, because that's what I hear. And I always make a joke, like, because people say, where are all the good guys? Where are all the good people? And it's like, oh, the government has this like list, and every Thursday at Starbucks at 1 o'clock, it's the only place to find good, and it kind of pokes fun a bit at the absurdity of our statement, right? And it's like, okay, all firemen are good, all baseball coaches are bad, all baseball coaches are
Right.
good, all doctors are bad, all surgeons, heart surgeons are okay, but brain surgeons aren't. Like, of course that's
Exactly.
not true, but I think until we say it out loud, it seems as the key is to find, you know, where the good guys are, which app the good guys are on, which church they go
I I honestly, I have been on and off of dating sites, gosh, over the period of the last, I don't know, 15 years or so, intermittently, not constantly. And I really don't like dating sites because they are hotbeds for narcissists and other users, people who are actually married.
to.
Um, I did happen to find my partner on one of these. It was eHarmony, but that was after weeding through a
Yeah.
lot of, toads.
And
Um,
you have to weed through. I think that's what people are so avoidant to do, right? It's like, oh, where do I find the good person so I don't have to go through that weeding process? Because maybe they don't trust themselves to go through the weeding process.
well, I think part of it is because of the emotional trauma. What
Uh-huh.
happens is, and a lot of people don't realize this, but when we leave a toxic relationship, whether it's because the narcissist has left us or because we left them, and this is why it's so important to do the healing work, we still have a trauma bond. And so what happens if we go into another relationship too soon? The trauma bond transfers to the new person.
Can you say that one more time just to make sure everyone heard you?
If we don't do the healing work and we jump back into another relationship too soon, the trauma bond does transfer over to the new person.
Mm-hmm.
Narcissists don't experience trauma bonds, only we do. And so if we haven't done some healing on that trauma and we haven't gotten or even figured out what our deal breakers and boundaries are, we are just setting ourselves up for more of the same, really, because there are so many users, narcissists, players out there. And, the running narrative is that we're attracting these people. But what I have found, it's not really that we're attracting them because there are just so many of them. You can't go down the street in your neighborhood without encountering a person like that. There's just so many.
Well, I talk about like a stray cat analogy, and I actually got some feedback on this because people said, I love stray cats. I love what you say, but don't talk bad about the cats. And so I'm apologizing to all the people. I'm not saying bad things about cats. It's just an
analogy.
Yeah. But people talk about, don't feed the neighborhood cat because it'll never leave. Right. So that weeding process is there's always going to be stray animals come to our back door. Metaphorically, I'm not telling you to hurt the animals, but metaphorically, the stray animals, the narcissists, the sociopaths, the psychopaths coming in to look for feed, look for supply.
Right. And so it's not that we're attracting these people, it's that we're accepting them.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about, Kim. Yes.
Yeah. And I don't mean we're accepting the abuse. What I mean is when we start to notice red flags, then we start trying to justify all these reasons, and we're on Google trying to figure out, why are they ignoring me? How come I haven't heard from them in 3 or 5 days? When you start Googling this stuff, that is a sure sign that something's not right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But it's not that we attract people like that. It's that we accept them and we keep them in our lives and try to form healthy relationships with them, which never works out.
Try to help them, try to save them, try to change them. And that comes from a place of it. What, in my experience and what I've seen, is that's not always from a place of brokenness. Sometimes it's from a place of kindness or a place of trying to do the right thing.
Yeah. And, I get where people are coming from because I'm still a recovering codependent myself. But the difference is I don't give in to the urges. So when I went back out and, onto the dating scene, I may have felt yucky when I would tell someone, sorry, but this isn't going to work out, block, delete. I got to the point where I didn't mind doing that.
Yeah.
And I didn't mind walking away when things started getting kind of weird. But, at that point, I wasn't imprinting onto the first person who showed me attention.
So something that I've noticed is women say, they'll be a month into the relationship or, 5 or 6 weeks into the relationship. And they'll say things like, well, I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. I don't trust him yet. And I say, well, you shouldn't. You don't have enough information on this person to not be looking, because I think they want that sense of safety that comes from, I've been with my husband for 5 years. I don't wake up wondering if he's going to leave me today or if he's going to work out. Like, we've been a very stable relationship. We've now known each other for 5 years. This past weekend, Super Bowl weekend.
Oh, congratulations.
So I met him, married for 2. And, I don't have that same process of deciding about him all the time. And it's work. I understand why you don't want to have that process. You just want it settled in your head and to be able to move on. But a month into the relationship, 3 months into the relationship, 6 months into the relationship, I think, I'd love to know your opinion on it, we should always be deciding, because if red flags pop up at 5 months, maybe it's great for 3 months, but a red flag pops up at 5 months, you don't want to already have settled it in your head that you're going to be with this person no matter what.
Right. And that is part of the journey of recovery. Mm-hmm. Okay. We have these false ideas about relationships. Thanks, Hollywood. Thanks, Disney. You know what I mean? And let's face it, our hurt inner children. And so a lot of us are, I won't say it's really a fault because it's a trauma response, but we're kind of waiting for that person to come in and rescue us from all of our woes. And that just, first of all, we should never put that burden on another human. We need to resolve our own issues. But, it's always
and create stability within ourselves, right? When I think about like solve our own issues, like what does that mean? If someone's saying like, what does that mean? It's, I am whole, I am stable, I am capable, and I'm looking for someone else who is whole and stable and capable to do life with.
Right. And that's healthy.
Right.
We often, when we're not, I'm not going to say that I'm completely healed and I'm levitating over mountaintops, you know what I mean? But, we're always going to have to work through issues because we've been programmed since we were infants. So it takes a lot of digging into your psyche and resolving these things. But, when I first started this last time, I've been with my partner for, about a year and a half, going on a year and a half now. And I was still kind of weirded out in the beginning if he didn't call me every day or if he didn't email every day. But that's actually normal. What isn't normal is when you have someone who's constantly texting, constantly emailing, and then suddenly they stop.
Yeah. Or something else not normal or weird. I think you used the term weird before, and that's my favorite. Like when you notice something's weird, right? That is the red flag. Like that sense of feeling weird, something's off, something's wrong.
Right. And as a woman, and I'm just talking about male-female relationships here. I know there are a lot of different types of relationships out there, but these are just the kinds of relationships I've been in. And I'm just talking about the men that I've been in relationships with and men in general. They don't want a woman who is going to give up all of her friendships and just be there for him right there on the spot, because there's no mystery or intrigue in that.
Okay. So I had another coaching client and she used the phrase, I said, what are you looking for in a relationship? And she said, well, I'm looking for someone who's number one in my life. And I went, okay, and we had just started working together, it was very literally her first month, so, I give her a lot of grace in that. But I said, can you tell me what that means to you? And she goes, obviously I'm not going to put him before my kids. And, and then she said, well, I know I'm not going to put him before myself. And I said, but what does that mean? Like in healthy, sometimes my husband is above me and sometimes I am above him. And sometimes,
right.
But the healthy piece is taking turns, right?
Right. And that doesn't happen in toxic relationships. It's always us giving up everything for the narcissist or the toxic person.
But you can imagine her putting, I'm looking for someone to be number one in my life on her dating profile.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That is like a signal to users. It's like, pick me. I'm the one. I'm going to do it all. I'm going to give up everything for you. So, I'm in a relationship right now where my partner and we're never going to get married. We've just already decided that. Not that I'm against marriage. It's just not for me.
Sure.
I've been down that road before, and so has he. We live in our own places and we get together and then we go back to our lives, and it just works out for us. We're not constantly depending on each other for our emotional well-being or our joy. So we're sharing our lives as relatively whole people, and we enjoy our time together. And then we also enjoy our time when we're doing our own things.
I remember kind of early on when I started dating my husband, you're talking about the emotion, not depending on each other for all your emotional needs to be met. And that is one of my favorite topics to talk about. And I think about my life as like a play, and there's different players that play different roles. And if for example, people I do yoga with, my husband doesn't want to do yoga, like different, that's a very easy example. But also if I'm always having a bad day, it's appropriate to work that out with some other people rather than putting that whole burden on my husband.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's because, it's okay if you're going through a rough patch. Maybe you lost a parent, or maybe a long-term friendship ended for whatever reason, and you need that emotional support. But if you're going to your partner all the time and you're always sad and you're always upset, um, that's going to not be any fun for them anymore,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not because, don't look for a soulmate who's willing to take on that whole burden of your living, right? Like the burden of living is on you, and the burden of living is on me, and my husband's burden of living. And the good thing about this is, he's got his own burden of living that I'm like, not my problem to solve. That's you, right? And this is me. And I'm here for you, and I'm responsible for myself.
Right. And so if there ever comes a time, obviously you can't have these kinds of relationships with narcissists to begin with, because they're going to get angry. They don't want you to have needs or emotions, because you're supposed to be there just to cater to them. And even if you give them everything they want, they're still not satisfied. Mm-hmm. So, we're just talking about healthy and normal relationships right now. But yeah, so you can be there for someone. I mean, I went through a rough patch, which I think was probably just some kind of midlife crisis, maybe another level of spiritual awakening or something. That I think partly had to do with moving to a new place, which is not in the country. So I was grieving for a while. And he was so sweet and patient with me, but I knew that I couldn't stay in that phase forever and keep, being a certain way when he was around. So luckily, I got through that and things are back to normal. But yeah, we can't, like you said, we can't put that burden on another person that our well-being is dependent upon what they're doing, what they're saying.
Yeah, no. So how do you, because I know this is the phrase that people would say to you, how do you find a good guy, or how do you have a healthy relationship after a toxic one?
Well, a few things. The first is, you might meet really great people who are not narcissists, but they're still not going to be compatible with you.
Yeah.
So you can go out and have fun at dinner. You guys could even go on a trip and have fun. But, there are just things like religious beliefs, or, maybe they like to go and jump out of airplanes and you don't want to do that. Or there could be any number of things. It doesn't mean that because someone is fun to be around that they're going to be a compatible relationship partner. So you have to be discerning around that, but mainly be discerning when those red flags start popping up. And instead of saying to yourself, how can I make this person see how great I am and what good relationship material I am, and what can I do to make them like me? You don't need to go down that road. You don't need to make other people like you.
Or how do I make them like themselves? Right? That's the other side of the coin. Oh, but he had a really hard childhood, but with
oh my gosh, yeah,
with my good love, and right, we're giggling about it now, but we've obviously done it ourselves, right? Yeah. And so in my book, Toxic Person Proof, I actually say this is a very fancy technique, so don't try it, definitely don't try with anyone violent, and don't try it, but if this is like a long-term friend, she's saying, I met this great guy, and and it's like, well, maybe even say the things that in their head they're thinking but not saying out loud, like, yeah, I mean, sure, I know he's had a history of 30 different horrible relationships, but you are probably so special that he will completely change who he is for you. Even say the ridiculousness out loud. Again, use this very cautiously, very good friend, but even well, she's probably too wild for you now, but if you get her pregnant, she'll probably settle down, I mean, just the ridiculous things that we actually think. But if you don't say them out loud, you don't realize how ridiculous they are sometimes.
Right. That's true. And, when it does come to toxic people and narcissists, what we're not really thinking is they've had other partners who had the same deep love and devotion that we have, and it didn't make a difference. So we gotta understand that even though our love might be pure and innocent and very deep, it's still not going to save a narcissist. Other people have tried.
Well, and I see movies and read stories about, oh, I was a complete mess and then their love changed me. I don't know anybody in real life who I would say that about. Like,
No.
not at one.
I don't think I've ever come across anything like that either. Not at all in narcissistic relationships, but maybe here and there with normal people, but but that's because it wasn't a lifelong thing. Like, you can't go into a lifelong, addict, for example.
Yes.
Something that you're constantly having to sweep up the mess and come rushing in to rescue them. You can't have it, that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Once in a blue moon. And that's the thing. Well, my narcissist is also an addict. And so people think, well, if I can get them to stop the alcohol and all I got to say is watch Dirty John season 1 and and you'll get your answer right there.
Yeah, that's tough. So what other advice? I want to ask you about how much to tell people about past relationships when you go on dates. Like, what is your thoughts and opinion on that?
I'm glad you asked that. So
I asked it for a reason.
So the first thing we need to do before we even think about dating again is know what your boundaries and deal breakers are right away. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying flip them out on the table at the date, at your new date. No, this is for you. I would say when you're out dating, freshly back into the dating scene, you don't want to talk about past relationships. That's not what you're getting together for.
Can you say that one more time?
When you're dating someone, it's supposed to be fun and light. You don't want to lay down all your relationship traumas on the table.
So I don't have to do that date 1, but date 2, I can grill them and then tell them about my trauma, right? Maybe date 2.5.
I don't know, because you still don't know the person.
I'm kidding.
Well.
I'm being silly. No, I'm being silly, because that's what I hear people. It's just, and I think what they think is if I just go ahead and lay it all out, they will accept me and love me for it. And I don't have to have this broken piece in my head. Or you're thinking they're going to tell you the truth about their own stuff. It's I did it right this time. I had the really hard conversations right at the beginning. And it's like, that's a big assumption. They were telling you the truth.
Exactly. And why would you tell that stuff to a stranger? Because you're sitting there eating dinner doesn't mean they're your friend or that they're going to be respectful or any of those things. Mm-hmm. I would say if you've been dating maybe around the 6-month mark, mm-hmm. Because you want to see what this person is really like. You don't want to tell them what your relationship traumas are, because if you are with a narcissist or a manipulator, guess what they're going to do? They're going to pack all that into their little bag so they can pull it all out later and use it as ammunition and use it to exploit you and take advantage of you. Yeah. So we don't need to tell everyone our relationship trauma. That's actually detrimental.
And it's not cute.
No, it's not.
It's not cute. I talk about dating brands, and I said, you don't want your dating brand to be she who still needs to heal.
Or he who still needs to heal.
He who still needs to heal. Yeah. And I think flipping it is really helpful. If a guy comes in and you can tell he's really has a lot of baggage still and really kind of wrapped up in the dysfunction of his past, does that mean a good catch for you? And they're like, no. It's like, well, then, that's why it's important to do our own inner work, right? And not hoping another relationship will solve all our problems. Because it's a good way to ruin a healthy relationship too.
It is. Because if you go out, maybe this person is healthy and normal, and you sit down and you're like, oh my God, this is what happened to me. And they're going to be like, whew, okay. I don't want to go there, and we shouldn't expect a person to jump in and rescue us. So what I normally tell people is, first of all, wait a year. Even then, when you do start dating again, don't move in together until you've been together a year. Don't get engaged. Don't get married. That way you have a year to see how they're going to act around special occasions, holidays, birthdays, and things like that. Then you may be able to meet their family. Because when you jump in right away, most of those relationships are going to just crash and burn.
Yeah, yeah. And you might be in too deep, because then you have to say, well, then where am I supposed to go? Now I see a red flag, but I don't have anywhere to go. I live with this person, am I going to kick them out? Then it's embarrassing. There's not a lot of shame attached to breaking up with a boyfriend in the same way of breaking up with someone you live with or are married to, or even breaking off an engagement, right? There's a lot more shame attached to that, because it's, you have a boyfriend, people, okay, you broke up, you broke off how many engagements, right? That's more difficult. So it's important to wait on some of those things.
Absolutely.
I love it. Kim, any last words for wisdom on dating after a toxic relationship?
I think probably the most important thing is to have a very strong sense of self. Know what your passions in life are, know what your boundaries and deal breakers are. And we don't need to be completely healed to have a healthy relationship. Again, like we mentioned at the very beginning, as long as you have your boundaries and deal breakers and you're willing to walk away and mean it, then you don't have to worry about what other people are, if they're toxic or not. As long
I
as
love that.
You are your own best friend and advocate. That's all you really need.
I love that. Kim, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Tell people where they can find
me.
Oh, we'll have you again. Tell people where they can find more out about you.
Well, the main place to go is my website, which is kimsaeed.com. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. So there you go. And Pinterest.
Look her up, Saeed. Yes, Kim Saeed. And Kim, thank you for helping us on our journey to becoming toxic person proof.
It's my pleasure.